Today, we are going to uncover the mystery behind a horrifying murder that took place right in the heart of Taipei, Taiwan. The crime scene was located in Zhongzheng District, considered the very core of Taiwan, where the presidential office and executive yuan are situated. In other words, it is home to the country's most important government institutions. This area is heavily guarded, with security personnel stationed everywhere. It is one of the most secure locations in Taiwan. Yet, who could have imagined that such a brutal murder would occur in a place under strict military control? This case exposed a dark side of the military system at the time, an era that was still relatively closed off. Whenever an incident occurred within the military, countless truths were concealed, and many irregularities were buried under layers of cover-ups. More than 25 years have passed since the murder at the military museum, yet the question remains, was there really only one perpetrator? So, what exactly happened here? Let's turn back time to June 1999 to uncover the details of the case. That day was the second day of the Duanwu holiday. Duanwu, also known as the Dragon Boat Festival, is a traditional Chinese holiday celebrated on the 5th day of the 5th lunar month each year to honor Qu Yuan, a patriotic minister from the Warring States period of ancient China. On June 19, 1999, a Saturday during the extended Duanwu holiday, the sky over Taipei was overcast and gray. In Zhongzheng District, traffic moved as usual. The military museum, located on Guiyang Street, was quieter than normal, perhaps due to the holiday. That day, 17-year-old Zhen, who lived in Sanchong, rode a motorcycle with her older brother to the military museum. She needed to write a military report, specifically a report on military training. Zhen was an 11th grade student at Jimei High School, and her final exams were scheduled for Monday, June 21st. However, since her report required photographs of various weapons, she and her brother arrived at the museum at 2 p.m. The siblings agreed to meet at the main entrance in 50 minutes. While waiting, her brother took the opportunity to buy a cassette tape nearby. He planned to return quickly and wait for his sister, but a sudden downpour disrupted his plan, delaying him by more than 10 minutes. When he returned to the museum, he stood outside waiting for his sister. But as the minutes ticked by, the entrance remained eerily silent. Under the pouring rain, the military museum stood strangely quiet. Where had Zhen gone? The older brother stepped into the military museum to look for Zhen, but the guard on duty told him that no one was inside. Feeling something was off, he went back outside and continued waiting by their motorcycle. Another hour passed, 60 long minutes, but there was still no sign of his sister. He thought to himself, the museum is huge, with 3 floors. Maybe the guard didn't check properly. So, he decided to go back inside. He had already waited for an hour, and now he was determined to find his sister. He couldn't accept the idea that she had just vanished. He confronted the guard, saying, I saw my sister go inside. How can you say there's no one there? If she had come out, I would have seen her. The guard finally gave in and said, All right, go ahead and check. Inside, the museum was indeed empty, except for another soldier. Zhen was nowhere to be found. Could she really have left on her own in the short time, just over 10 minutes, while her brother was out buying a cassette tape? With no other options, he had to go home. When he arrived, he told his mother, I waited for her for so long. I even went inside to look, but she wasn't there. I don't know where she went. His mother asked if he had searched thoroughly or if he might have checked the wrong place. He insisted, I looked everywhere and she wasn't there. Mom, what should we do now? At first, the family thought that maybe Zhen had secretly gone out with friends. But as night fell and she still hadn't come home, their unease grew stronger. Zhen was the 3rd child in the family. At school, she tutored other students in math. She didn't have a boyfriend despite being kind and easygoing, though if she was upset, she wasn't easily persuaded. She was a simple, well-behaved girl whose life revolved around school and family. Where could she have gone? Days passed, yet there was still no trace of her. Her brother eventually put out a missing person notice, After it was posted, the family hoped that if anyone had seen Xiao Zhen, they would reach out. But once the phone number was made public, they were flooded with calls, some from people who were just making cruel jokes. Others claimed to have seen her somewhere, but when the family followed up, the time and location didn't match. Then, an important call came in. Someone reported seeing a girl who looked like Xiao Zhen in the Tam Sui area. The caller claimed to have seen her being forced into a car, which then drove toward Sanji. After that, the caller hung up without saying anything more. This phone call sent the entire family into a panic. Had Xiao Zhen really been kidnapped? The strange thing was that she had no known connection to Tam Sui. Why would she have been there? Her parents were baffled. Kidnappers usually target wealthy families, they said. But we're just an ordinary family. Why would anyone kidnap our daughter? Indeed, Xiao Zhen's father was a driver, and her mother was a seamstress. They lived a simple life with no debts or financial disputes. Raising 3 children was already difficult enough. There was no clear reason for criminals to target their family. The police began wiretapping the family's phone calls. But after days of surveillance, they still found nothing. If she had really been kidnapped, why had the abductors remained completely silent? Finally, the police confirmed that the call had been a hoax. Someone had taken advantage of the family's distress to try and extort them. Once again, the case hit a dead end, and the search for Xiao Zhen was back to square one. The disappearance of Xiao Zhen became one of the most perplexing cases for the police. At the time, Chen Liang-ren, the deputy director of the Sanchong Police Department, stated that the more he examined the case, the more something seemed off. Typically, missing person reports were not treated like criminal cases. They usually only recorded basic information about the person and the situation without going into much detail. But Chen Liang-ren knew that the key to finding Xiao Zhen lay within those details. The initial report was extremely brief, simply stating that the older brother had taken his sister to the military museum to take photos for her report, and then she disappeared. Chen Liang-ren questioned the brother. "Where did you go after dropping your sister off at the military museum?" The brother responded, "I went to buy a cassette tape. My mother asked me to get one. She wanted to listen to music. I also have to study for my college entrance exams." Chen Liang-ren continued, "How long were you gone?" The brother answered, "Just a few minutes. Besides, I came back and stood at the entrance of the military museum, and I saw that my sister hadn't left yet." After hearing this, Chen Liang-ren was convinced the key to the case had to be inside the military museum. This thought only surfaced after ruling out all other possibilities. Initially, no one suspected that the museum itself could be the problem. After all, a military museum should be an extremely secure place, with guards stationed inside. How could something dangerous happen there? That's why everyone initially assumed that something must have happened to Xiao Zhen after she left the museum. Perhaps she was kidnapped, or maybe she ran away. However, her family ruled out all of those possibilities. In the end, they found themselves back where they started, back at the military museum, where Xiao Zhen had vanished. The family hoped to check the security camera footage to confirm whether Xiao Zhen had actually left the museum. However, their request was denied. When the police stepped in and formally requested the footage, the military evaded the request. At first, they claimed that the security cameras only recorded at night, not during the daytime. Then, they said that the cameras were not recording during the Duanwu holiday. So where was the surveillance footage? Was there even a recording? If so, what did it capture? Or had the tapes been taken by someone else? Even the museum staff couldn't provide a clear answer. To make things even more suspicious, all security footage from other days was intact. Only the footage from the day Xiao Zhen disappeared was missing. Due to continuous pressure from both the family and the police, the military museum finally handed over a surveillance tape. However, after watching it for a long time, there was no sign of Xiao Zhen entering the museum. Upon closer inspection, investigators noticed something strange. The date on the tape was from the previous month, May 19th. Someone had removed the old label and rewritten it as June 19th in an attempt to deceive the police. The investigative team immediately demanded to summon all soldiers on duty that day, including the soldier responsible for managing the surveillance tapes, to clarify these suspicious details. Through their investigation, they discovered that 3 soldiers had been on duty at the military museum on the day of the incident. Among them was a 21-year-old corporal named Guo Xin-he, who was in charge of maintaining the surveillance recordings. He was the one who had provided the altered tape. When asked about what had happened that day, Guo Xin-he remained calm and simply stated that nothing had happened. His reaction showed no signs of guilt or nervousness. However, Xiao's older brother noticed something suspicious. On the day of the incident, it was Guo Xin-he who had told him that no one was inside the military museum. The brother recalled, "At the time, I was wearing flip-flops, so I felt uncomfortable going inside the museum and decided to wait outside. Seeing me lingering there, he told me that there was no one left inside." He found this explanation highly suspicious. Moreover, one detail stood out in his memory: Guo Xin. He was clearly on duty that day, yet he was not wearing his military uniform. When asked about it, he claimed that he had just stepped out and returned, so he hadn't had time to change. Since Guo Xin he was a member of the military, the police couldn't just take him into custody. The situation nearly escalated into a conflict. After all, he was under military jurisdiction, and at the time, the Sanchong police had no real authority over him. Back then, the military had not yet been placed under judicial oversight. If a soldier was involved in a case, the military handled everything internally. As a result, transferring military personnel to police custody was a complicated issue. The investigative team thought, "If we can't take him in, then we'll interrogate him right here at the military museum." They moved Guo Xin-he and the other soldiers on duty that day to a separate area and began questioning them. At first, Guo Xin-he remained composed. Armed officers stood nearby. Though he appeared calm, some investigators sensed something was off. His gaze started to shift uneasily. At that moment, the investigation team recalled something Xiao's mother had mentioned. She had said, "If my daughter gets angry, she can be fierce." The police considered that if Xiao had been attacked, she might have fought back, possibly scratching her assailant. With this in mind, they asked Guo Xin-he to remove his uniform and change into the clothes he had worn that day. As he retrieved his clothes and was about to head to the restroom to change, the officers stopped him and said, "We're all men here. It's just changing clothes, not stripping completely. You can change right here." Guo Xin. He hesitated, looking visibly uncomfortable. As he changed, the officers noticed a scratch mark on his back. The wound was clearly visible, and beneath the zipper of his shirt was a small drop of dried blood. When they asked him to turn around, they discovered scratch marks on his chest as well. When questioned about the injuries, he claimed that he had fallen and gotten bruised by his gun while practicing shooting. The police immediately challenged his explanation, saying, "These are clearly scratch marks. How could firearms training cause injuries like this?" At that moment, Guo Xin. He appeared visibly shaken and was at a loss for words. He then asked for a pen and a piece of paper, saying he wanted to write something. After a short while, he handed the note to the investigator. It read, "I will give you money and take you home." The police immediately scolded him. "This is not the time to talk about money. Tell us where Xiao is." However, he remained silent. Since they were unable to take him into custody, there was little more the police could do. At that moment, the investigators were under immense pressure. If they didn't find Xiao soon, the case could become a cold case, or worse, a miscarriage of justice. Without a body or concrete evidence, could the suspect even turn the tables and accuse the police instead? At that time, a feng shui master advised the victim's family to light incense and pray for Xiao to guide them. The family followed the advice, and remarkably, within half an hour, they received a breakthrough. Near a parking lot close to Banqiao Park, someone discovered a suspicious black plastic bag. Fearing there might be a body inside, they immediately reported it to the police. When the police arrived and opened the bag, they were met with a heartbreaking sight. Inside was the body of a young girl, her face swollen beyond recognition. After examination and confirmation, authorities identified the victim as 17-year-old Xiao. After 5 agonizing days of searching, the family received the devastating news they had feared the most. The grief of Xiao's parents, witnessing the tragic reality of burying their own child, was indescribable. Her mother was consumed with guilt, blaming herself for not protecting her daughter. "If only I hadn't pushed her to go to the military museum that day to complete her report, this wouldn't have happened," she lamented. No amount of tears could bring Xiao back. No amount of sorrow could mend the family that was once whole. They couldn't understand, how could a place that was supposed to be so safe turn out to be so dangerous? How could a newly enlisted soldier like Guo he commit murder inside a military museum? Eventually, Guo he confessed to his crime. The police planned to take him to recover the victim's body, but the military refused to cooperate. It wasn't until 7 a.m. the next morning, when the police finally took Guo Xinhe into custody, that the Ministry of National Defense unexpectedly held a press conference to reveal details about the case, catching the police completely off guard. Li Mingde, the director of the military museum, later disclosed crucial details. "First, when I returned and changed into my uniform, I noticed my locker had been tampered with. Second, the water pipe under the sink was broken. Third, I found several strands of hair in the corner of my office." He explained that he had been on leave for 3 days during the Duanwu holiday and only returned to work on June 21st. Upon noticing these irregularities, he asked Guo Xinhe to show him the surveillance footage, only to discover that one tape was missing. Guo Xinhe had no explanation for the missing tape and instead tried to deceive investigators by handing over an old one. As a result, Li Mingde took him to military headquarters for detention and ordered his dormitory to be cleaned. However, before the case was solved, he never mentioned any of these details. He later explained that, as a superior officer, he couldn't openly suspect his subordinates or disclose information before the situation was fully understood. Regardless of his reasoning, the fact remained that the crime scene had been tampered with, and the police faced significant obstacles in collecting evidence. From enlisted soldiers to the museum director, from the director's office to the interior of the museum, serious management failures were exposed. But that wasn't even the worst part. On the day of the incident, 3 soldiers were on duty at the military museum, 1 duty officer and 2 corporals. One of the corporals on duty that day was Guo Xinhe. According to the Ministry of National Defense's internal investigation, the duty officer on shift that day had been drinking alcohol inside the museum before leaving his post without authorization. Another officer also neglected his responsibilities. He was busy watching TV and sleeping instead of following protocol. At that moment, Guo Xin. He saw Xiao enter the military museum alone. He followed her. Guo Xin, he was in charge of the museum's security camera recordings and had access to the keys. He knew that the entire museum was monitored by 16 surveillance cameras operating 24/7, except for 2 places, the director's office and the restroom. Seeing Xiao searching through materials, he approached her on the 3rd floor and asked, "Are you looking for documents? Let me help you." Then, he led her into the director's office. Wearing his military uniform and carrying himself in an official manner, Guo Xin he appeared trustworthy. Xiao had no reason to suspect him. Moreover, the military museum was a facility run by the armed forces. Surely it was a safe place for a high school girl. Trusting the uniformed soldier in front of her, Xiao followed his lead into the director's office. As she bent down to take notes, Guo Xin. He suddenly grabbed her from behind. Xiao panicked, struggling desperately before managing to run into the restroom inside the director's office. She thought that if she could just get inside and lock the door, she would be safe. But she was a second too late. The petite 17-year-old used all her strength to resist. The small restroom became a battleground where she fought for her life. But how could a high school girl overpower a fully grown man? As she fought back, he strangled her until she stopped breathing. The image of Guo Xinhe in his military uniform became the last thing Xiao ever saw before leaving this world. Despite his panic, he knew exactly what he had to do next. He rushed to the storage room behind the military museum, grabbed a rope, tied up Xiao Zhen's body, and hid her under the bed in the director's office. He knew the director was on leave and wouldn't return anytime soon. After leaving Xiao Zhen's body in the office, he acted as if nothing had happened. He then drove off with his fellow soldiers to his hometown to celebrate the Duanwu festival. He had already made plans with them, and suddenly canceling would have raised suspicions. During the holiday, he carefully plotted how to remove Xiao Zhen's body from the third-floor office without anyone noticing. He knew he couldn't do it alone. He found a large wooden crate, placed her body inside, and then called the security platoon, saying he needed help transporting some equipment. When the soldiers arrived, they saw a heavy wooden crate. They had no idea what was inside. Guo Xin, he was only a corporal, yet he was able to request assistance from the security platoon. 2 soldiers were sent to help him lift the crate onto a truck. However, the crate was unusually heavy, making them suspicious. They asked him why it was so heavy. Guo Xin, he told them, "It's classified documents and broken firearms." He had planned the excuse in advance. Knowing that it was supposed to be confidential military equipment, the 2 soldiers didn't dare open the crate to check. Guo Xin, he successfully deceived everyone and transported Xiao Zhen's body to a parking lot near Banqiao Park, where he disposed of it. According to his own confession, from the moment he had the idea to attack Xiao Zhen, to the assault, murder, and disposal of her body, he carried out everything alone. His statement was logical, without inconsistencies or contradictions. Every detail matched perfectly. But the real question remains, can we truly believe that Guo Xin he acted alone, based solely on his own confession? Could he have committed the entire crime by himself without any help? First, Xiao Zhen's older brother recalled that about an hour after his sister entered the military museum, he saw Guo Xin. He dressed in sportswear, calmly answering his questions. But here's the problem. Could a 21-year-old with no prior criminal record really stay that composed after committing murder? Could he have calmly cleaned up the crime scene and continued his duties as if nothing had happened? Would he have been confident enough to leave Xiao Zhen's body hidden in the director's office and then go on a 2-day trip without worrying that someone might enter the office and discover the body during that time? And beyond that, could a low-ranking corporal really have had the authority to order 2 other soldiers to help him lift a crate containing a body onto a truck? Even Guo Xin, his own family, didn't believe he acted alone. Later, Guo Xin, his stepfather, revealed an audio recording. He explained that, as the secretary for a member of parliament, his job required him to record phone calls. According to the family, the recording was of a phone call Guo Xin he made to his mother on June 23rd, shortly after the news of Xiao Zhen's disappearance broke in the media. In the call, Guo Xin he told his mother not to contact the police, claiming that everything had already been taken care of with his superiors. He also instructed her to lie to the police, specifically telling them that he didn't have a girlfriend. Additionally, he reminded her about an upcoming membership fee payment. This phone call suggested that Guo Xin he was quite confident. He seemed to believe he would be protected and that everything would be fine. It was this very confidence, along with the fact that he so quickly became the sole suspect, that led many to question whether there was something more to the story. Was he covering for someone? Could there be an accomplice the investigators had failed to uncover? And then there was the issue of motive. According to Guo Xin he's confession, he saw Xiao Zhen alone and thought she would be an easy target. Within just a few minutes of her entering the museum, he allegedly decided to take the enormous risk of committing a crime, fully aware that, if caught, he could face the death penalty. Was it possible that he was taking the fall for someone else? To this day, the police still don't have a definitive answer. The only real evidence that could have revealed exactly what happened that day was the surveillance footage from inside the museum, but the tape had vanished. Could someone have tampered with the recording to cover up the crime and let Guo Xin he take the blame? It was entirely possible. Because of the unclear motive, rumors about supernatural influences began to circulate. Some people claimed that Guo Xin he had spoken about seeing a katana engraved with the words, "Execution of 100 people," a reference to the infamous beheading contest during the Nanjing massacre, a historical exhibit displayed at the museum. According to the rumors, when he saw the katana's blade glinting in the light, he was suddenly possessed by the spirit of a Japanese soldier and committed the crime under its influence. After the trial concluded, the defendant was sentenced to death. Neither the police investigation nor the military court found any evidence of an accomplice. On August 3, 1999, just 2 months after the crime, Guo Xinhe was executed by firing squad at Taipei Detention Center. One morning in July 1999, around 6 a.m., in a small alley in Sanchong, Jinbei, a young woman knelt in front of Xiao Zhen's house, sobbing uncontrollably. Xiao Zhen's family rushed out to see what was happening. At first, they thought she might be a scammer. They asked, "Who are you?" "We don't know you. Why are you crying here?" But what she said next left the entire family speechless. She claimed that Xiao Zhen had appeared to her in a dream. She said that Xiao Zhen's spirit was still wandering, unable to find peace. According to her, Xiao Zhen had no clothes and felt ashamed to face her parents, so she didn't dare return home. Hearing this, the family felt uneasy. They weren't sure if Xiao Zhen had truly sent a message through a dream, but the thought unsettled them. They held a ceremony for her, but Xiao Zhen still did not return. For the family, this was another devastating blow. The murderer had been caught, but Xiao Zhen's spirit was still afraid to return home. Desperate, they conducted a second spirit-calling ceremony. In Taiwanese and many Asian cultures, if a deceased loved one is successfully guided back to the family's altar, the family can feel at peace knowing their spirit has found its way home. On August 4, 1999, at Taipei's first funeral parlor, the voices of Xiao Zhen's classmates singing brought a moment of warmth to an otherwise sorrowful funeral. At just 17 years old, Xiao Zhen had no chance to fulfill her dreams. Her life had been cut short far too soon. Her father, once a search and rescue volunteer, felt immense guilt. Perhaps because his own hands had once missed the chance to protect his daughter, he now wanted to protect others, to safeguard other families from experiencing the same tragedy. After Guo Xinhe's execution, 18 other individuals were disciplined by the Ministry of National Defense. The highest-ranking officer punished was a lieutenant general who was reprimanded for failures in military oversight. Military Museum Director Li Mingde was found guilty of 2 major infractions and was discharged from service for his failure to enforce discipline, which ultimately damaged the reputation of the military. Before his execution, Guo Xinhe signed an organ donation agreement, allowing at least 4 patients to receive life-saving transplants. This case served as a wake-up call, highlighting the urgent need to tighten disciplinary enforcement within the military and prevent internal corruption from tarnishing the armed forces. However, the tragic consequences of poor military discipline and the rushed verdict of the military court were not unique to the military museum case, nor would they be the last. So, what needed to change? In 2014, Taiwan took a critical step by transferring military trials to civilian courts. For over 25 years, human rights advocate Huang, who has worked extensively on military justice reform, has emphasized that while the military has strict regulations, the real problem isn't with the rules, it's with the people. Some senior officers became complacent, neglecting their responsibilities and relying on luck. When incidents occurred, they shifted the blame onto their subordinates. But not all responsibility can fall on one person. To this day, this issue has yet to be fully resolved. And since 2018, when Taiwan transitioned to a short-term military service model, the problem has only worsened. Now, due to a shortage of soldiers, recruitment standards have become more lenient. To retain personnel, officers are hesitant to enforce strict discipline. Mrs. Huang stated that although many soldiers and officers in the military still have strong ideals and ambitions, as long as people continue to adopt a just-get-it-over-with mindset, tragedies like this will never end. The murder of Xiao Zhen at the military museum concluded with Guo Xinhe's execution. But lingering questions remain, haunting those left behind. Was Guo Xinhe truly the only perpetrator? Did the military cover up or protect anyone involved? The unanswered suspicions about possible accomplices and the true motive of the killer were buried along with him. All that remains is the unbearable grief of the victim's family and the lingering unease of the public over a case that never felt fully resolved. Finally, we extend our deepest condolences to the victim's family. We hope they will one day find peace after such an unimaginable loss. And may Xiaozhen's story serve as a painful lesson for us all, pushing us to build a safer and more just society together. That concludes today's video. See you in the next episode on Crime Documentary Files.